Good evening, councillors. Good evening. This meeting is now open and it's being recorded by Zoom webinar facility. Recordings of the council meeting or parts thereof can't be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused, or retransmitted without the prior written consent of the general manager. And the meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on council website. The persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory statements. I don't think you would make any defamatory statements tonight, so that's good. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gungungara and Darug people and respects the history and culture of elders both past and present. I'll ask Prior Gordon to say the prayer.
Thank you. Just an introduction. I am not a Catholic priest. I am a religious brother in the San Francisco order, and I'm a nurse looking after our elderly at Columbia Aged Care Facility. So let us pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Everyone got their prayer? Counselors? We'll be saying the second part. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, allowing us to grow closer as a group, nurture the bonds of community. We pray for our council members as they pray with their hearts. Together, Heavenly Father, I thank you for having the privilege of serving our town.
I pray,
Father, that as we discuss our agenda and policies for our beloved town of Oberon, we will always put the people's interest above our own. Remind us, Father, that we are in this position not to be served, but to serve the Father, just as Christ, who is King, came not to be served, but to serve, ultimately die on the cross to save us. Also pray, Father, that we will uphold what is moral and rational. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This evening we have two councillors who are inconvenienced and have asked for a leave of absence. And that's Councillor McCarthy and Councillor McKippen. I would move and second for that, please. Councillor Watt and Councillor Hayden, all in favour? Passed unanimously. There are also Councillor Trembath is joining via Zoom this evening, and I think Councillor McKinney, Councillor McKibben is going to join via Zoom as soon as possible. Any declarations of interest? All right, this evening, councillors and anyone joining via Zoom, we have one presentation, and it's not to council, it's by council. And this is the Terry Block. This presentation is the Terry Bell, who a few weeks ago achieved 50 years of continuous service with the Oberon Council. Terry commenced his employment with the Oberon Council in March 1973, has remained in continuous full-time employment ever since. Ringer is a respected and highly valued member of the Oberon community and a dedicated and long-standing public servant. Terry celebrated 50 years of continuous service with the Oberon Council as a full-time employee in March this year. And over these many years of service, Terry has been part of council's work team. He's worked diligently and probably on every road or bridge in this LGA and a lot of roads and bridges and every other LGA around us, as well as the waste depot, the water treatment plant and the sewer treatment plants. Terry consistently shows great pride in his work. That's a quality I admire. He's dedicated to collaborative teamwork and always goes above and beyond what is necessary. He is fully competent to operate many, if not every bit of plant and equipment we have in our inventory. And he readily shares his knowledge and know-how with other workers and members and brings them on in their skills. In 50 years of public service, Terry has always delivered quality infrastructure and services to the Oberon community and its visitors, in good times and in bad. He's assisted in all sorts of community events and shows in the good times and cleared up after storms and snow, as well as fighting floods and fires in the not so good times. Terry's a member of the Native Dog Rural Fire Brigade, which he joined in 1969. So that's 54 years there.
Good.
He has held the deputy captain positions from 2000 to 2005, 2013 to 2015, and then 2017 to 2021. He's also the brigade first aid officer and has been since 2003. In 2020, he received the Premier's Bushfire Emergency Citation for his significant service during the 2019 and 2020 bushfire season. In the volunteer role with the RFF, Terry is consistently stood out as a role model and an example of all that is good within the RFF. His voluntary contribution to the Oberon Heritage and Collectors Club is also commended. He is the current president of the Heritage and Collectors Club and works hard to preserve and share access to collectors. He's enhanced the club's collection of items, historical interests relating social, cultural, industrial, and rural history of our town and district. Terry Bell is an exemplary public servant and an exceptionally good bloke. And this certificate we're about to give him is simply recognition of his outstanding service to the community. Terry, on behalf of the principal, it's my great pleasure to congratulate you on this unique milestone. This is the podium.
Thank you.
Well
Well,
done.
no.
That's great, well done.
Yeah. Oh, my. Yeah.
And it's gone off council.
Oh, still good. Yeah. Come in. Yeah, thank you.
You owe me what?
You want to write it? Bruce, we're all going to get a photo.
Oh, right.
Sharon said, Sharon will. Happy days.
Hang on to it for one family.
Yeah.
I won't watch you there. I'll give that. Family. Machine. That you
Getting water, Fred. Sliding. Feeling like-
And that's what he said.
I didn't know you really could do that. Yeah, it's been responsible, but- Much appreciated.
Oh, you're much appreciated as well.
Oh, you want to come back to work tomorrow? You're gonna do this one, right?
We'll see if you're hungry.
See you.
It was. Very nice with the other things, so that's kind of thing. Good evening, Councillor McKibben, welcome.
Good evening. Sorry, I had a few technology problems.
That's all right, it happens. All right, there are no questions from the public tonight, I assume. Right, confirmation of minutes. I'll just make a note that I intend after confirmation of minutes to bring forward item 1408, which is the QBRS, and the reason for that is that we don't want to have Zoe sitting there on the end of Zoom for several hours before we get to it in the normal course of the event. All right, item 8.1, confirmation of minutes and the recommendation that minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 21st of March 2023 be confirmed. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
I did just want to make a point that Councillor McCarthy is only within the record of attendance. Once again, it was not reflecting the system, so that was all in those minutes. Councillor McCarthy. Yeah.
Want to copy it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Block assembly. Okay, Councillor McKibben.
No, I'm more than happy to second them. I heard that there were a number of amendments to resolutions, so I thank the executive secretary for keeping up with all those amendments.
I agree. Councillor Tucker.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the one other point I picked up is in item 16.5, legal advice. There was an amendment moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McKechnie, but then we're both shown as having voted against their own motion. I'm pretty sure we both voted for it.
Okay. We'll pick up the
Well,
recording and make.
well, there is no recording.
Of course not. 16.5. All right, we'll take that on face value.
Start with the public reports.
Okay, we'll change that. All right, put the motion all in favour. Motion is passed unanimously. All right, now I bring item 14.8. Quarterly budget report review statement forward. I have a mover and a second for that. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Graham. All those in favour? Okay. Item 14.8.
Sorry.
It's on page 401. Quarterly budget review statement number 3 is January to March 2023. The recommendation of this item 14.8 is received as information. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
You, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second it. I have a couple of questions, if I may. On page 402, where it talks about the new MOU for the showground and the deficit of $15,000. I'm just curious as to what that was. It may have come to council, but I don't recall it. Is this some additional financial assistance from council to this showground?
Do you remember?
Through the chair, it's a contribution made through the MOU that we've signed with the Showground Trust. What you won't see in that allocation is that this is a net zero process from a council perspective, because the offset on having the money contributed to the trust is offset by the additional things that council can do for free at the showground, like use the facilities for events and the like of things, use the impounding facilities for our ranger function and those types of things. So it's been developed on a give and take basis, but it needs to be accounted for within the PBR.
And so it's a new, there's a new MOU. When did that?
It's through the chairs, council's been working on preparing an MOU with the showground. Sorry, the trust managers for quite some time, for quite some time now, and it's just been finalised in the last, I think it's the last 6 months.
Now, I might add the other thing it doesn't show is all the ad hoc work that council provides the land managers in terms of mowing and other things, and this is now accounting for it, or providing an accounting line.
Yeah, and I'm not objecting to it. I just was puzzled to see it and wanted to understand what.
That's fine.
And also I had some about the iPhone on page 411. So it's probably for Malcolm Valley. In the table, the final column is headed balanced committed. Is that just another way of saying not yet spent?
Sorry, can you please repeat that question? It came through with feedback.
So on the table showing the current situation with the TI fund, page 411.
Yep.
The final column is headed balance committed. Now, to my mind, committed normally means, you know, there's been orders written or something like that, but I'm thinking that in this case, it just means money not yet spent.
Correct. Yeah, so it's more of a budget allocated, yet to be spent, but committed to that line item.
Right, thank you. And there's several questions just on particular lines in that table. The equipment shed, as far as I know, that's completed. And does that mean there's $14,000 unspent and available for something else?
Unless the invoices came through this month, that would be correct, yes.
Thank you. Question probably for the Director of Technical Services. Oberon Street paving $75,000, nothing spent as yet. What's happening with that?
That funding was for some previous cleaning of paving. There may be some residual left over at this stage. We'll put in there.
Yeah, so that's carried forward.
Yeah.
And so it was still available for the current financial year. Nothing spent in the current financial year, so it's all still available. Do we still need it, or is the work completed and that available for one?
At this stage, the work that was done has been completed. Yes, it would be available.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair before we get too carried away. The work that was carried out on the main street pavers was the Oberon Street pavers was quite a substantial job to get them back to a level that we were comfortable with. It was always a consideration that would need to be at least clean periodically. So allocation within that fund to assist in those cleanings is provided within that fund.
Yeah, thank you. I do have a bit of a problem with maintenance being done out of TI fund. I think TI fund should be put back to work. So if it's got cleaning, I do have a concern, but we can leave that for another day. And similarly with the street line marking, if that's maintenance of line marking, I don't think TI fund is the appropriate place for it. Street tree planting, we were told that it's going to commence in autumn. Is that still the case? And when can we expect it?
At this stage, the planning for that is underway, so we don't have a definite date, but that is the anticipated timeframe for autumn.
We're halfway through autumn then.
Desirable time of the year, yes.
All right, so you're still expecting by the end of May that'll be happening.
Look, something would be engaged by that period, yes.
And through the chair, just in terms of clarification, there is a standing resolution from council to undertake that within this period, so.
Yes,
It has a standard resolution attached to it.
I was just getting concerned that we're a fair way through autumn and running out of time. And final question was Edith Road rock retaining wall, when do we expect it?
At this stage, we're in the subject to the contractor availability, which is now building a second 2 sets of walls for the Legends plant. Following that, then would be a review perhaps of at that time frame and
The life of the carry over into the next year?
at this stage, yes, that would be very highly likely.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's carried unanimously. Item 9.1, the mayoral minute. There are some items that are missing, which I will bring up once we get to after the mover and seconder. I'll fill in the blank spaces. Move and second, please, Councillor Hayden. All right, councillors, the particular issue I would like to bring up is the ARIC independent members interviews. They were conducted last Wednesday. We have an item later in the agenda for council to confirm the determinations made. The other one is the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal, which I attended last week in Orange. It was held by the president of the tribunal. He was seeking views on councillor and mayor duties and how they have changed and what other factors have now impinged upon them versus what exists when the determinations were originally made some decades ago. My views were that we need to reevaluate councillor fees. And my main reason is that at the moment, having councillor fees at the level they're at really makes being a councillor only possible for people with either reasonable income during retirement or time and space still within their normal working week. And time and space in normal working week is often not the case. I'm well aware of a lot of quite substantially younger people in the community who wish to be councillors, and that is a particular barrier to their sort of ability to stand, because the time that they would spend in learning how to be a councillor and executing their duties would impinge on their ability to hold down on jobs, which will affect their family quite dramatically. That was the argument for increasing or reviewing, not increasing, reviewing the councillors' remuneration. Other mayors made comments about mayoral remuneration, particularly the ones who had a particularly difficult time late last year with the floods and the ongoing recovery program. And the president of the Remuneration Tribunal went away and at least he understands life of the country, council and country rules. Any other questions about the council?
Yeah, sorry. Just on the 29th of the 3rd, board community consultative committee, I don't know whether you need a note there to state that Lauren attended on your behalf for that one while you were at the other meeting. They were all going at once. And the 17th of the 3rd, that's interesting, that was brought up last year when Andrew B brought up that he was going to face down about the Bureau of Meteorology. And I'm hoping that we can kind of somehow get something done so that we do get a reading done in over and against that we have more correct weather coming out there. So what would the outcome?
The outcome is that Bureau of Meteorology is perfectly happy for council to pay for it.
As they would. Thank you.
Councillor Gibbon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I heard you say you didn't attend the 29th of March biodigester community meeting. I was just wondering if there was any other councillor who did, just for an update.
I did.
No.
There was two events in the morning. Sorry, one event in the morning, one in the afternoon.
Oh.
And I missed the first 20 minutes of the one in the morning and I attended the whole of the one in the afternoon.
It was a different thing.
Was it very similar to the presentation provided to council, or was there any more dynamic information provided?
It was a much more dynamic presentation, but that was because there was a fairly energized audience.
Right.
And I've communicated this to the gentleman who did the presentation, as well as to Mr. Borg himself, that the general outcome we described as good technology, wrong place. So I think people were generally okay with the technology to a certain level, but they didn't want it where it is. Now, I have also asked and yet to receive a response to a request to have a couple of more community consultation periods in the evening so that working families get an opportunity to attend. It was very clear that running these two community consultation periods in the middle of the weekday, or middle of the morning and middle of the afternoon, you are going to get middle-aged people or older and retirees, and that's it. Although there was one or two younger people there. So it got the message to one segment of the community, but it needs to be spread wider than that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
And just the other one that causing a bit of concern there is on that afternoon, there was, I'm sorry, that was the 31st actually, it was the Board Community Consultation Meeting, which is a standing committee, which I attended for a short time and then left in the capable hands of Councillor Trimble. Do you have anything to add about the Community Consultation Committee, Councillor Trimble?
No, I think that basically covers it. It was quite a robust discussion that happened, and yeah, but on the whole, they did do a good job, just in the wrong location, and the timings just need to be improved so that the wider community is more up to date with exactly what's going to be potentially coming to town. But otherwise, it was quite good.
Anyone else got questions? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion passed unanimously. Notice of motion. Item 10.1. Motion is at each meeting of the Works Committee, one chapter of the chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for the Morrison Low report be included as a confidential item in the agenda for detailed discussion and formal review of the recommendations. Do I have a mover? Is there a seconder? You seconding? Councillor Hayden? Councillor Tucker?
Yeah, thank you. You'll be aware that this is something I've raised a number of times. I've been trying to get some sort of review happening for a long time. It's not out of any criticism of the Morrison Low report, but generally I think it's a good report. I'm not out to change it or cancel it or anything like that. It's simply that it is such an important strategic document on council's most important function that I think it's important that we should work our way through it and review it and make sure we're all still comfortable with it. Things may have changed since it was written. The current council may have different views on some areas of it. I'm not sure, but I do think it's important that we understand it and formally review it, which is exactly what we decided to do 12 months ago. I suggested in this motion that we do it at the Works Committee simply because that's what was decided in early last year. although I still think it would be better if it was done in a less formal way, because that would allow us to have a more detailed, informal discussion without the restriction of having to speak either for or against any particular motion. So if someone wanted to move that we not do it at Works Committee and have a subcommittee or more workshops similar to our roads workshop a couple of weeks ago, I'd be happy with that. But that's the reason I suggest the Works Committee simply to be in accordance with what Council previously resolved. And my final point is that I also agree with the General Manager's note that that maybe an audit of the implementation could be useful at some stage. And that could happen if Council thinks we should do that. That could happen concurrently. But just having an audit on its own, to my mind, isn't sufficient. That misses the point of what I'm trying to achieve of having a detailed discussion and review of the recommendations. So that's an explanation of what I'm trying to do there.
I was happy to second to give Councillor Tucker his right to bring up something forward to council out of respect. I've seconded this, taking into account of the General Manager's note. And regarding any reports that we have, I suppose they do become out of date at times, so it may be worthwhile to review some of the points within that of the works.
Councillor Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think Councillor Tucker's notice of motion is reasonable. The General Manager did give us a status report on how the recommendations were progressing, as he's indicated in his note, and they were rated high, medium, and low priorities. So I do think it is timely that we review where we were at with the status of those. I know that some circumstances have changed, as we all know, because of the amount of grant funding we've had, and that has made some differences to how we apply and where we can apply some of the recommendations. So I do think it's timely that we look at those recommendations and where we're up to in the high, medium, and low, and how far we've got down, and where there are circumstances that have made it inappropriate for us to implement those recommendations, because, as I said, we've had such huge operational and capital grants amounts that some of them may not have been able to been put into effect at the original time frame. So yes, I would support it. Whether it's do a chapter every month, every 3 months, or review the status. Look, but I'm happy with the notice of motion if that's how Councillor Tucker wants to push it proceed with it. Thank you.
I just General Manager something. What do you mean by through the audit process? Do you mean an individual audit of what's happening?
So through the chair, council needs to recognise that the Morrison Low report was a report that was undertaken by council with a series of recommendations that were endorsed by staff. So those recommendations have been, for the last 18 months, put in place, and as I've indicated in the report, a number of those recommendations have been actioned and critiqued, and some of them relate to financial contributions, some of them relate to how we do stuff, all the sort of things that council are very much aware of. The audit process is simply by the way I recommend an audit process is with council's function is to set a direction for council staff to put some actions in place, and the audit function is generally the way that you test whether that has worked, whether it hasn't, what the status of that is, which is why I have included in my note to say that the way that you test this is through the audit process, because with all due respect, and this is with all due respect to all councillors, asking councils to review a professional document that was prepared by professional engineers to assist council in moving forward, to then review themselves, is a bit disadvantageous to those councillors that aren't engineeringly au fait, for lack of a better word. And I wouldn't like to put council in that position. So an audit, by getting someone who knows that system is a way of protecting council, but also giving them some advice about where things are up to.
Thank you.
I'm going to speak against it. I agree with the General Manager. When you have something done by professional engineers and professional civil engineers at that, their recommendations are taken from an unbiased perspective. Their interest is doing a good job and presenting viable ways of doing business. The previous council accepted that and it was implemented. It is entirely appropriate to run a performance audit over the top of it. And that means you get someone who is separate from the council to look over it, see if it's still valid. If the implementation phase has been done appropriately or not, and provide any other recommendations. Now, I think that despite the enthusiasm of all the councillors who might want to sit there and go through an engineering document about road building, there is not a great deal of road building expertise amongst the councillors. But if we get a professional person to do an internal audit, that should give us the right, at least a series of answers, which maybe point to deficiencies in what we've been doing, or even deficiencies in the original audit. But I think councillors who are not competent to write the audit in the first place, write the paper in the first place, are not the ones to review it. Councillor Trimber.
I would speak against it as well, as I agree. I don't think any of us really have the expertise. And as you said, it was produced by a professional organisation. And I'm not sure even having an audit now, is it really necessary if we're tracking as well as it appears that we are? And what's that going to cost? And what will be the outcome from that?
The audit is generally a limited process. It's not 4 or 5 people, it's probably 1 or 2. And they're chosen for their expertise.
So if we have an audit, sorry, through the chair, if we do have an audit and it comes out that we're tracking extremely well against it, are we then going to put this Morrison Lowe report to bed that seems to have been floating around from the day we were elected? Seems to be an issue that won't be put to bed.
That's up to councils. And in fact, it'll be an arid process. It won't be a council process initially. Councillor Gibbon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was always envisaged, and I put up the initial, was the mover of the initial independent audit that ended up commissioning this Morrison Lowe report in the previous council term. And it was always envisaged that we would review the progress against the recommendations. And as the General Manager has indicated, some of the recommendations were at once thought to be inappropriate. I don't see the problem with the council going through a report from the General Manager updating us on where we are with the recommendations, and they were classed as high, medium and low, the current status. It would then be appropriate, if council wished to have an audit, as was originally envisaged, as to the progress against the recommendations. But we can certainly look at the status of them and understand where the status is currently, because we haven't done that for some time, as you will appreciate, Mr. Mayor. And the recommendations were pretty, clear in what they indicated. So I don't recall for at least 18 months or more longer that we've actually reviewed where we are with those recommendations.
Councillor Gibbon, I was also one of the two councillors who were instrumental in getting that audit up and running, the Morrison Lowe report up and running. What Councillor Tucker is suggesting is a detailed review, line by line, apparently, of each chapter. Now, that's not reviewing the recommendations and the progress towards them. The recommendations and progress can be delivered by the general manager quite easily, but an audit done, an internal audit done in accordance with under the ARIC oversight, I think is a much more appropriate way than a bunch of council sitting around. I'm happy to have the reviews of the progress. That's entirely within our remit. But when we start going through individual programs, that's getting beyond the confidence I think of most councillors to understand exactly what is happening with the roads and those recommendations. So I still think that I still speak against it, and I'll maintain that. General Manager?
Just through the chair, I'm purely talking to the motion as it sits now. The recommendations from the Morris LOC and the council portal as we speak, I'm more than happy to go through and have an update on that, on where they are and what we've done. Now, the thing is with those recommendations, a lot of them have been implemented and they continue to be implemented. So there is no update because that's what we do. If we didn't do that, then we'd report against that. But there are the rationale behind my comments around an audit simply relate to how the notice of motion sits now and what I believe is councillors' role, and I don't expect councillors to be engineers. It's as simple as that. So that's why when Councillor Graham talked about what do I mean by an audit, and I think that we've started to talk about audits now against the provisions of what the motion currently is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kibben?
Mr. Mayor, could I propose an amendment?
Yep.
The amendment would be, and sorry, I have not put this through before because I've only just thought of it and it's arisen out of the discussion that's arisen out of this notice of motion discussion. In two parts, that the first one is that the general manager provide an update status report against each of the Morrison Low recommendations. And this is not part of the notice of motion, but if this is Sharon, but just a little extra. And all I'm asking, General Manager, is that you say it's being implemented. It's been implemented a number of projects. It continues to be implemented. That's fine. This recommendation hasn't been implemented for the following reasons. That sort of description is how I'm looking at it. Is that that's what I'm thinking? And the second one would be following the update status. The council determine whether they require the matter to be referred to ARIC for an audit to be undertaken. As to the recommendations, as to whether to review, amend, or alter those recommendations. So I'm assuming it'll be an engineering audit to look at that. So the council determine whether it needs to be reviewed by an independent engineering audit to assess whether those recommendations have been implemented, reviewed, or require amendment. That's what I'm sort of talking about.
We will get Sharon. We'll get
It was going really well for you, changed halfway through council.
The problem we've got is if Sharon brings the screen up with the
Yes.
Amendment on there, we lose sight of the people who are on remote access.
Yes,
So-
councillor, can you?
I don't think that's a problem.
Councillor, can you?
Lauren and I won't be offended.
Through the chair, while Sharon is
Councillors, can you see that screen?
No.
No, the council's online.
Oh,
Can you see?
Yes, I can. I can see one. I can see two.
Right, okay, now let's see whether we're clever enough for the councillors in this room to see it at the same time. Can you still see it?
No, we
online?
can't. No.
No, we just got the council website.
Moment.
I nearly finished reading the second one. The first one seemed fine. I was on to the halfway through the second one as it disappeared.
Now,
Thank you.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's basically it.
Councillor McKibben, I would suggest we just put a full stop after Eric for an independent audit, full stop.
All right, I'm happy. Yes. We assume that it's going to be an engineering audit.
The performance audit.
Yeah.
Are you happy with what's there, Councillor McKibben?
I am. I don't have a seconder yet.
I'm going to ask for a seconder for this amendment. Councillor
I'll second.
Hayden. Sorry,
I can't.
I will
Graham.
second.
sorry, Councillor Graham got in before you, Councillor Tremblay.
That's okay. Thank you.
All right. Now, you've already spoken to your amendment, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Graham, you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, thank you. No, I think that's a much simpler way of getting the information.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not surprisingly, I'm not in favour of that because it defeats the purpose of what I'm trying to put up in the first place. If they were to become numbers 2 and 3, and my original motion was number 1, I'd be happy with it. But I was.
Well, you're not happy with it. You're speaking to it or against it.
Yeah, well, I'm speaking against this amendment if this is replacing my motion. If it's additional to my motion, I don't have a problem with it. But if it's replacing my motion, because it removes what I see as the crucial point of what I was trying to do in the first place, in the same way as when Morrison Low was being developed, there was a council committee that was involved, the steering committee. So they were non-engineering councillors, but still had a say in reviewing what was coming out of that report. And I understand that there were resolutions made by council, so non-engineering councillors making resolutions. So all I'm asking is that the current council have the same rights to go through it and review whether we still think the original recommendations are appropriate or whether things have changed. So I'm speaking against that amendment if that is replacing one.
Councillor Hayden?
Yeah, I did second the original motion, but for the discussion, but I am happy to support the amendment, even though we can have the lengthy discussions regarding sections within the Morrison Low report at any time with admin manager and then I'll run directly. So, but I do still think it's important that we keep abreast of certain things throughout that report and how they are actually sitting within the scopes of work, etc. And we can do that at our work committee.
Anyone else? Councillor Tremblay? You were going to second it. You got anything to say?
Oh, no, I totally agree. I think this is a much, the amendment suits better and we achieve a better outcome by this version and not having us all sit around the table working through something that we don't really have expertise in.
Right, a reply, actually, Councillor McKibben.
Sorry, I've just lost the audio from you, Mr. Mayor, but all I was suggesting, and in the first line, maybe we should ask for it if we're in April now, is it appropriate to have the first one achieved by June 2023?
The chair will bring it to the next works committee.
Or whenever the next works committee is. Yep. If that can be achieved.
Does that need to be in your amendment?
If the general manager says that it'll be provided by then, I'm happy that that'll be done by then.
Okay. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? 1, 2, 3. Against is councillor Tucker, rests in favour. So the amendment now becomes the motion. All those in favour? Same voting outcome. Councillor Tucker against, all the rest for. Motion, the amendment is passed. Sorry, the motion is passed. Now, item 10.2. Review of environmental effects and the environmental impact statement request for information. Now, councillor Tucker, the language used in this motion, I don't think it makes it a motion. There is nothing. Well, if it's not a motion, why is it a notice motion?
Because it's a question which I'm entitled to do under the code of meeting practice. It's a question using the notice motion.
What's a notice of motion?
It's a notice motion.
Yeah.
Notice motion needs to be something that has a statement of something that needs to be done. If this was a part, the general manager could just say no. And that would be compliant with the outcome. I have had some people look at a possible motion that someone else might like to take up as an alternate motion. I'll ask her when I'll put that up, if you would. It is the same effect, but it is a motion that can be executed as opposed to a request for information. And the request for information has already been provided in the general management vote. In any effect.
Yeah, I think there's a misunderstanding that it was never meant to be a motion to do something. It was only ever meant to be a question requesting information. My understanding is that that's part of the normal options available to us to ask a question through this process.
Well, the advice I have that it is a notice of motion, but the wording you have does not allow it to be executed so far.
Through the chair, by the very virtue of the original first sentence that says, in accordance with section 314 and 310, 310 is a council notice of motion. So it's dealt with as a notice of motion.
Yes, but I able to bring up the meeting practice at the moment. Well, like now, my understanding.
So what we've got on the screen there is the report, sorry, the possible alternate motion, but it is in words that can be executed as a notice of motion. If you'd like to accept that, we can perhaps move on.
Yeah, I'm happy to accept that, Mr. Mayor. I will still check the wording in the code of meeting practice because it's different from my understanding of what's available to us, but I'm happy to accept that.
Well, I'm offering it that for you to accept it.
Yes,
and put that up as your.
And I am
as an
accepting,
motion.
I am accepting that as my new motion.
Okay. Is there a seconder? Councillor McKibben?
Look, I'll second it. I think the general manager's note probably goes a substantial way to answering a lot of it. There may be some more detail, but yeah, I'm prepared to second it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't expecting to need to speak to this because I thought it was only going to be a question which has largely been responded to in writing. I have asked some follow-up questions in an email, but as far as I'm concerned, a large part of that question has been answered in the general manager's response.
Councillor McKibben.
Look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose, yeah, I had some doubts about the veracity of it as a notice of motion. I could understand the request in that I think I certainly am not clear on when an EIS or RF is required. So any information that could assist us obviously would would help. I do thank the General Manager for his note because I think that helps us. I suppose the question is that basically the notice of motion's been in a lot of ways answered. I'd ask probably Councillor Tucker what other further information he would be asking for, so that we, have some, I suppose, parameters as to how far this is to go. The notice of motion's passed, and I'd suggest the General Manager provide this is maybe a paper at the next meeting. But what else do we need, Councillor? What else would you be looking for, Councillor?
Speak before Councillor Tucker gets to that. Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really see the need for the motion because of questions of.
Councillor Hayden.
Yeah, the questions were answered in quite lengthy emails that were sent back by the General Manager. I also had questions as well regarding environmental impact statements. So we did answer the questions, and then the legislation it was all sent to us to review ourselves.
Anyone else? I agree with the other two councillors. I think that the questions have been answered. If there is a problem with understanding issues like this, the informal briefing session is the perfect forum to resolve that lack of knowledge. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have managed to bring up the relevant clause in the code of meeting practice. So clause 3.14 says, and this is under questions with notice. The councillor may, by way of a notice submitted under clause 310, ask a question for response by the General Manager about the performance or operations of the council. And that's all I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to get a motion passed for something to be done. I was simply asking a question to get a response from the General Manager. Now, the General Manager has provided a response. I have sent a couple of follow-up questions to the General Manager by email, but I certainly wasn't expecting that there would be a need for a vote on a motion to do something. That wasn't my intention.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to put the motion right now.
Excuse me, I propose an amendment, Mr. Mayor.
I just put the motion because the person who proposed this is not interested in it. I'm putting the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Tucker, all those against? Remaining councillors. The motion is defeated. All right, councillors and delegate reports. Black Springs Community Hall, item 12.1. Sorry, there's no delegate report. We're moving this forward. Yeah, sorry, committee reports, sorry. Okay, I would like to add one more line into the current recommendation. And that is that for item 3, for a period commencing on the 4th of May, the Black Springs Hall Committee meets every first Thursday of every second month until the end of 2023. That is what's in the minutes of the Black Springs Hall Committee, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So I'll put the recommendations. Sorry, the recommendations are the council receive and note the minutes and recommendations of the Black Springs Hall Committee held on the 20th of March 2023. 2, the council prioritise the repairs to the kitchen and allocate $16,000 from Parks and Gardens maintenance to fund and finalise the repairs of the kitchen in Black Springs Hall. And 3, that for a trial period of commencing on the 4th of May, the Black Springs Hall Committee meets every first Thursday of every second month till the end of 2023. Moving and seconded, Councillor Hayden. Someone else, Councillor Trimbar, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you've received the minutes in there, the minutes are quite lengthy. There's some discussion regarding the kitchen. There had been some quotes, and it is a priority to get the kitchen finalised and up to scratch so that it can be utilised to its full advantage. If council would see its way to endorse the recommendation number 2 and number 3 for the alternative dates for meeting being a Thursday, which people are more free to attend because Mondays and Tuesdays were pretty busy and pretty hectic for other people with other committee requirements. The Black Springs Community Association will be able to forego their $5,000 village fund to put towards the kitchen repairs as well. So it would then be, around 11,000 that would have to be found to go towards the rejuvenating of that kitchen, which then, once that's done, it's basically finalised and we can just move on with everything.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Trimbar.
I don't have anything to add to that. I agree with the recommendations, including the inclusion of point 3. It's a very active built community, and it's great to see that hall is being used more and more.
Councillor Trimbar. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just note that Barriga's community meetings are on Thursdays. I think it's the second Thursday of every month. This is proposing the first Thursday, is it?
Correct.
And I'll have to check that. And maybe I would be proposing an amendment in a point 4 that would basically be what the wording on page 46, that that council utilise the $5,000 that would normally allocated to Black Springs for 2023-24 as a part contribution to the 16,000 referenced in part 1 of the resolution.
So you're moving out of an amendment?
Yes. So the rest is the same, 1, 2, 3. I'm adding a 4.
You happy with that, Councillor Hayden? Councillor Trimbar? Are you happy, Councillor Trimbar, with that?
Yes. Yes, I'm happy.
Okay.
So we just on the amendment with adding it on to the.
All right, is everyone happy with the way the recommendations now in 4 parts? And what the 4 parts are?
This can come up on the screen.
If you just go over the page, you'll see that the paragraph is now paragraph 4 for the recommendation. Councillor Hayden actually mentioned it in her moving speech.
Council do need to say it on the screen.
Yeah, anyone need to see it on the screen, or are you happy with it?
Well, I think I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but I'm still a bit
Page
confused.
48.
Yeah.
There's a paragraph at the top there that says it's understood that council is facing budgetary constraints.
46. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, that's all right. I haven't got my reading glasses on at the moment. That's that 3-line paragraph at the top of the page.
Might have to word Black Springs village funding after village funding after Black Springs.
Here it
The only
is.
question I would make, I'm not sure, the way it reads at the moment, it really reads that in 2 we're using 16,000 plus we're using 5,000, which means we're actually allocating 21,000. What I think we're saying in 4 is that
It's now.
allocate 11,000 from Parks and Gardens. Okay, fine. That's right. I can see 11,000. Fine.
And anything that's surplus stays with the council anyway, so.
Yes, I'm happy with that.
So if the mover and seconder of the original motion are happy with those
Yes,
two amendments. Anyone else wish to say anything? Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just a couple of questions on this one. I'm not clear about the status of that, or whether it is a council asset and what are our responsibilities to maintain it. And whether we have a budget allocation for it, such as building maintenance, or is this, or is the $5,000 that goes to Black Springs, is that really the only funding source that is available to consider the matter?
Through the chair, council has considerably contributed to the upgrade of Black Springs Hall over the last 4 to 5 years. The 355 committee was set up as the current hall is a hall on Crown Land, and council now under its 355 is the trust manager of that. So yes, it does sit on the council asset. We have contributed quite substantially to the upgrades to that hall, and this allocation would be another way of contributing to that. Over the years, Black Springs community, Black Springs progress, whatever you want to call it, and residents within Black Springs have been quite frugal in utilising the village fund to assist in providing assistance to the hall, and we continue to provide maintenance to that hall as part of our building asset maintenance plans.
Right, and so that the $5,000 from the allocation for Black Springs, that's talking about next financial year's allocation. So the 22-23 allocation already been spent on other stuff.
It has, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So it would be $5,000 from 23-24 plus 11,000 underspent in 22-23 Parks and Gardens maintenance.
That would be how it works, yes.
All right. First of all, I'm quite surprised that Parks and Gardens is underspent, having been such a wet year. Do you have any figures on how underspent we are? Because my immediate thought was, well, there's probably lots of other parts of our operational plan which could do with some extra funds as well. And so why just, because this one happens to have come up first, why allocate that under expenditure in Parks and Gardens here, when there could be lots of others that would like to compete for it as well?
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. There has this Parks and Gardens maintenance budget this year. There was some good budgeting there based on the actuals we had from previous year with different weather and things like that. So there is some underspend there that we have utilised for this project, but potentially, depending on how the rest of the year tracks, there could be some potential there, which we're monitoring to see could that be utilised around to other areas, which I'm sure the Tech Services Director is also looking at.
So following on, if the $5,000 of Black Springs allocation is in 23-24, wouldn't it be more sensible to say let's consider the other $11,000 in the 23-24 operational plan as well? Now, if it turns out the end of 22-23 there is money left in unspent in Parks and Gardens, then we can decide what to do with it then, depending on what other things they might be competing for it. But rather than making that decision now, let's make the decision as part of the 23-24 budget deliberation.
Yeah, through the chair, we did consider that. But one of the issues that we're facing with all these things is contractor lead time and confirming this work now getting that all ready for spring, summer time. If we delay that decision until August, July, this work will not be completed until the end of next year, most likely. So that's the reason that we've put this forward now, is that work we know will still be a 3 to 4 month lead time based on the contractors that we're engaging for all the projects. That's why that's been put forward. Reasonably soon. That's the rationale for it.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
No.
Would like to write a reply? You.
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy with the alternative recommendations that have gone up. What councillor Tucker may not be aware of is this hall has had a substantial amount of money spent on it by both Oberon Council and by the Black Springs Community Association. It's a big asset for our community. It's a massive asset for Black Springs. The kitchen, sadly, was water affected and some things weren't finished correctly when it was installed. And this last bit of work is the finalisation to the work on that hall, so that the hall can start being the asset and bringing in an income to pay for itself. And if the kitchen is not up to the hospitality standard and the guidelines set down by the government, people cannot then go and have their wedding out there or their debut and utilise the kitchen. So this is why the kitchen has come up now. We need to get this done as quickly as we can. People want to have Christmas in July functions and things like that, and we need that. So that's the reason behind this.
Sorry, councillor McKibben, that was councillor Hayden using her right to reply. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion's passed. Thank you. Hazel Grove Public School. Sorry, which one?
I think you're a bit far.
Sorry, Community Services Committee, 12P. The council received and note the minutes of the Community Services Committee held on the 9th of March 2023. Mover, councillor Graham, councillor Hayden, councillor Graham.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that we accept the recommendation. The units are all there. You see there's a wide variety of community members that attend to that committee, and still reflecting on the festival from the end of last year. Still congratulating themselves. But also thinking that there's a lot of push to have another one. So that was the main discussion.
Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to second the recommendation to accept the report, and it was a very good report, and it covers a large demographic of people within that report. And as the people are there congratulating themselves, the community is still congratulating and talking about that event and want another one.
Well, that's good. That's good. Anyone else wish to speak to this? All right, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion's passed unanimously. Page 55, Hazel Grove Public School. Recommendation is that council receive and note the minutes of the Hazel Grove Public School Reserve Committee held on the 27th of March. That council accept the following nominations to the Hazel Grove School Reserve Committee, being Michelle Jamison, Graham Whittaker, Yasmin Armstrong and Renee Howard. That council is assistant in applying for relevant grants for repair of the Hazel Grove School house and outbuildings, and advise the committee of future grant avenues should they become available. And 4, council formally thank Chris Dawson for his dedication to the maintenance of the Hazel Grove School Reserve, and the committee writes to Mr. Dawson expressing that appreciation. Councillor Hayden moving. Councillor Watt seconding.
Yes, I hope council are happy to receive this report. It's been a long time coming. We finally got there. We've now gone from 2 committee members and hoping that council will endorse and accept the following 4 parties to membership of the committee. We had some discussions about roof needing repair and external cladding on the old schoolhouse out there. We'll be currently seeking some quotes and put the quotes together, and then hope council can assist the committee in applying for relevant grants when they do come up. And Mr. Cres Dawson has been doing all the mowing and whipper snippering and assisting another committee member with fixing up the tennis courts out there. So we're hoping to get it up and running and getting it more publicly available to people. They go out there for family history, and few people go out there that used to go to school. So it is an important asset for the community out there, which are still growing.
Thank you. Nothing to add? Anyone else got anything to add? Councillor Tucker?
Just one tiny point in recommendation 3, I assume assistance, to just say assist.
Anything different, Dave?
I think it's there.
If you'd like to change it, it's going to happen.
Okay, nothing that sounds different. Correct.
Give assistance to these people.
Up to you, you'll move it.
Oh. Either way, doesn't matter. We did this,
We can move it. You move it.
yeah.
All right, it's there. Councillor McKibben?
If we're talking about grammar, maybe in 2, it should say Michelle Jamison, semicolon, Graham Whitaker, semicolon, Yasmin Armstrong, semicolon, delete a semicolon after and that would be the correct grammar for those points. A semicolon shouldn't follow the and after Yasmin Armstrong in particular.
Okay, well, we'll leave that for another informal briefing session where
I
you
think
can give
the
a grammar
parties
lesson.
did a very good job in getting it.
In that case, I'll put the motion as it stands. All those in favor?
Thank you.
You pass unanimously. All right, item 12.4, Oberon Arts Council Incorporated. Recommendation of the council receiving note the minutes of the Oberon Arts Council general meeting on the 22nd of February 2023. Moving second to Councillor Graham and Councillor Hayden. Mr. Graham.
I'd like to report the recommendation. There's a couple of points in the minutes that you might be interested in. One of them being that unfortunately I wasn't at the meeting, I couldn't go, but the meeting decided that they really would like that 40-kilometre main street, which was interesting.
Does that mean we're going to have artistic signs that designate that? Because that's the only relevance I can see that there was to the arts council.
They were just making a point that they thought that was a good idea. The other one that perhaps, Mr. Mayor, as you go to the Health Council, you might like to bring up is the difficulty that the Arts and Health program, which is an excellent program, and it's spread right across Central West, and it sort of started at Oberon, but now they're having trouble getting the Oberon residents involved because there's no one to take them to the common room, no one to turn on the TV for them to participate in the activities. So maybe the Health Council could encourage something to happen there.
I will contact the health services manager up there and just pass on that concern.
That would be good.
I guess the best way.
It's a great program.
I'm not going to wait another month for the health council. So,
Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to second that. And it was some informative minutes there in that little brief, and they can be happy if they want 40 kilometres an hour, but that's okay. Those 5 people can discuss that between themselves.
okay, anyone else? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Pass unanimously. 12:05. The Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting of the 23rd of March. I'll make one minor amendment to the recommendation, and that is council receive and endorse the minutes. So I'll put the recommendation that is the council receive and endorse minutes of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee held on the 23rd of March, 2023.
Andrew the third.
Andrew?
Sorry, I can't second. I wasn't there. I'm assuming Councillor Tucker will second. But I'd like to make a comment.
Oh,
That's right.
well, whatever.
You're
I'm needing-
moved it, Councillor Tucker seconding.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've got you, Andrew.
I'm happy to endorse the recommendation. I did want to go back to page 66. There's some spelling in under general business that may need to be spelled up in the first line after current rugby instead of Ruby. It'd be nice to have Ruby fields everywhere. And in the second line where it says bogs, it should probably say bogs.
Okay.
That was it. Thank you.
Councillor Tucker.
Nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor McKibben.
thank you. I was going to raise the bogs to Borg, and also I think there's a couple of references to fiance rather than finance.
Yeah.
The other question I had, and I'm probably wrong, was John Thompson at the previous meeting to which he confirmed the previous minutes? I thought it was John O'Malley was there under
No.
point 3.
I think that was where John O'Malley stepped out and John Thompson stepped in as the auditor's representative.
Okay, so he was present there? I didn't think he was present.
Matt, you got anything to add?
I thought John O'Malley said this is my last meeting and he was there for the full meeting, and I didn't think John Thompson was there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty
Is it?
to be correct there.
Okay.
And so I don't think John Thompson can move a confirmation of the previous minutes.
Well, he may not have, but they were agreed by the people who were there at the time. So it is your.
No, they haven't gone to the ARIC committee yet. I don't think they come to council before they go to ARIC, don't they?
Through the chair, this is the minutes of the 8th of December.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
22 minutes, yeah.
But so they have been already accepted by ARIC, have they?
Yep.
Yeah.
On the 23rd of March, have they?
Yeah, I think it's just John O'Malley.
The other thing I have, there are 2 independent members. And the notes refer to an independent member referred to page 3, the independent member. There are 2 independent members. It's very hard to know which one has referred it. Can we use names or something? Obviously, one is the chairman, and then there's another one.
There was an independent chair and an independent member. There is now an independent chair and an independent member that is appointed and one that is about to be appointed.
That's right. So we're going to have utter confusion if we use this independent member. Are we going to use the name, or what are we going to do?
There isn't for the previous minutes, because there was only one independent member and one independent chair. But I think your point is absolutely well made, and we'll make sure that we use names in the future.
Because, for instance, the chair seconded the fraud and corruption policy, but that was Neil Maltby, and he's obviously independent chair. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, you understand my point.
Through the chair, we'll take that into consideration. And they are out of the minutes. When a recommendation gets put in place, the appropriate name gets put towards that person who is in fact moving, seconding that motion. We'll take that on board, council.
All right. Anyone else? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is passed. All right, record for decision, item 13.1. Now, councillors, there are a number of policy issues coming up tonight. I would, and these are basically to put these, put in on display on public exhibition and submissions to be received. I will put in a item 3 on this particular recommendation, and I'll be putting an item 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it is, on similar ones. And that is that any minor changes requested by council be delegated to the general manager to implement prior to exhibition and endorsement. So that prevents having to go through a review of the policy line by line and to fix the grammatical errors and awards. And as they go on exhibition, if you have substantial changes, I would request that you put them into the process of the exhibition, and they'll be considered along with any other comments from the public.
Just to get on to that, Mr. Mayor, we have in fact received some correspondence from councillors. Thank you very much in regards to what I would consider administrative changes. They don't change the flavour or the context of the policy, and I will we will have that endorsed as prior to exhibition.
Before we put this, I call for a mover and second. Have you got something you wish to add, Councillor McKibben?
No, I'm prepared to move this one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right, can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'm moving it.
Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've read through this. It basically follows the guidelines. I think it's pretty acceptable to go on public exhibition.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As earlier, I sent you a proposed amendment, which is to add a number 3 into the motion. So I don't know, it might be, is it easy to bring that up on screen, or should I read it out?
Number 4.
So you're proposing an
Oh,
amendment,
yes,
councillor?
yes, number 4. You want me to read it out while that's coming up on screen?
I'm just waiting for help.
No, that's fine.
Start reading it.
Yeah, so the extra part that I would like to add on is that an annual confidential report be provided to council and AREC about any reports or complaints submitted in relation to policies 1119, 1207 and 2123, or about any other investigations conducted by external agencies, setting out the number of reports or complaints received, a brief outline of the nature of the reports or complaints without disclosing identities or details, an outline of any investigation undertaken, and outcomes.
You'd like to speak to that?
Yes, because did you need a second before I speak?
You're moving and anyone seconding?
So through the chair, this is a 4 point. You already have a mover and a seconder for the 3 points. If the mover and the seconder do not like that 4th point, and I'm happy to talk about that should it get a seconder, then either the mover and the seconder have to agree to that 4th point, or councillor Pucker through an amendment needs a seconder to include it.
I don't accept that. I'm the seconder because why do we need an annual confidential report?
Councillor McKibben,
Sorry?
you
Um,
moved the motion, are you happy or otherwise with this 4th paragraph?
Correct me, General Manager, I thought there was already a reporting mechanism in relation to fraud and corruption and those policies mentioned already, is there not?
Through the chair, under the parameters of 1119, there is a process proposed that there is an ARIC involvement in that sort of stuff. In regards to 1207 and 2123, which are significantly operational matters, there are other ways in which that is dealt with, but at this point in time, there's no seconder to that.
So at the moment, the seconder of the first of the original motion has said they're not, that councillor is not happy with the amendment. So because you need both the mover and seconder to be both happy for it to go in as unchallenged amendment, we'll need to find a seconder. Well, you'll move that.
Yes.
Now, do we have a seconder for it?
Am I able to second it as the proposer of the initial motion? Probably not.
All right. There's no
Is that
seconder.
correct?
Yes, that's correct. If there's no seconder, the amendment lapses. And when you put 3 hands, you know,
Being filtered through more than we.
Thank you.
right?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're back to the original motion with in 3 parts. We have a mover and a seconder. Does anyone else wish to speak to this particular motion? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is passed unanimously.
That's 2, 173.
Page 173. Policy 2117, the corporate card policy. And I am adding paragraph 3, the recommendation with minor changes requested by council to be delegated to the general manager to event prior to exhibition and endorsement. Now move and second, please. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, I've put a number of amendments through the general manager in relation to this and questions. Some of them were questions. So I suppose what emanates out of those questions will be included in the policy before it goes on public exhibition. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct for the administration conditions. If there is still a concern raised by yourself, Councillor McKibben, with the amended version that goes up that you need some clarification on, we will deal with that in the following month on their return to council.
Okay, I mean, you may have replied to my email. I haven't had a chance to check them today.
Through the chair, councillor, you'll check your emails in good time, I am sure.
Okay, right here. I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, councillor.
Three parts or two parts?
3 parts.
3 parts.
Okay, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Thank you, councillor Hayden. Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Motion is passed unanimously. Item 13.3. The Audit Risk and Improvement Committee terms of reference. And that is the recommendation of the council will endorse the revised Audit Risk and Improvement Committee terms of reference. Mover, Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden,
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought there was one of the unvoting but possible attendees was also the deputy mayor, but I might be wrong. Maybe that just comes in under the general term. There was a reference to it at some stage. I'm happy if it stands as it is, but I can be an uninvited, what do you call it, uninvited attendee or whatever.
No, you're an ARIC member. I'm an ARIC member, and Councillor Tucker's the alternate. So if you're not there.
Oh, okay, fine. I thought it was you and Councillor Tucker. Okay, right.
You've been absent for a couple of them, that's all.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think I've had a vote every meeting so far.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben. Anyone else? All right, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. All right, item 13.4. Governance policy. And I'll add again the point 3. It remains that previously advised, the recommendation is the council place governance policy 11.12 on public exhibition for 28 days, and the submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policy will be adopted as presented, and we delegate to the general manager inclusion of any minor changes prior to going on exhibition and endorsement. Moving to second, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the recommendation in all 3 parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I think this is one of our shortest policies. I'm more than happy to second it.
Short policy.
Anyone else? All right, thank you. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried unanimously. 13.05.
Okay.
No, 13.4.
13.5.
13.5, internal reporting policy. And I'll again add the minor amendment clause. Recommendations that council place the revised internal reporting policy 1207 on public exhibition for 28 days. And submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policy will be adopted as presented. And the minor changes clause is there as well. Councillor Hayden and Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation in all 3 parts. Thank you.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is commonly known as the whistleblowing policy, and I've gone through it, and I think yes, it's appropriate for our council.
And for any councils that get approached, you can please take note of the
Yes.
email addresses that you can invite people to use if they have an issue. I think that's one of the more important things that changes have been made.
Yes.
All right, anyone else? Put the motion. All in favour? Motion is passed unanimously.
Page 237.
All right, full supervision policy. Recommendations, council delete policy 3602 for full supervision. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Cody. Councillor Graham. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation. We no longer need that policy. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Seconded, thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Is it appropriate, I asked the question, is it appropriate to delete the policy or to put the policy on suspension? We can still have the policy on the books, but resolve that it not be implemented due to the fact that we have a contractor running the facility.
Through the chair, I've used the word being half pregnant before, and this is one of those scenarios where we currently have the facility outsourced, and as such, their policies would supersede the need for this current policy. And I also state that should that change, council will need to look at re-implementing policies that would address the provisions of certain things.
Councillor McKibben.
So just from a work health and safety perspective, are we required to have a policy in place as the principal for this facility, because we own it? And if there are gaps between what we as the principal have to have in place and what the Y has in place, then we have to ensure somehow that they are complied with, because that's often the case we have to be careful about.
Through the chair, understand the commentary. What you'll also be aware of is that the Y work under a management agreement.
Yes.
Yeah, all their WHS policies were endorsed by council as part of the implementation of that management agreement. And once again, they are the policies that supersede the need for this one. Once again, just because we delete it from our system does not mean that we lose the policy from being able to reinvigorate itself should that need arise.
Okay, I've asked the questions and we've had the answers, so I'm on that basis happy that we're not in a position where we could be liable for a gap analysis, as I understand, for a gap situation. So on that basis, I'm happy to proceed with its deletion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to raise exactly the same question in the situation we're in, where it's possible that the management may change. But it might be more prudent to simply leave that policy sitting there just in case.
Okay, anyone else? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? The motion is passed unanimously. Sorry?
Unanimous.
What does unanimous say?
Yep. All right, item 13.7, the ARIC independent member appointment. And the recommendation is that council endorse Harley McRae as the independent member of the ARIC for the remaining council term. I've moved and seconded. Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden, Councillor Tucker.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I looked through all the original applications. Harley McRae was one of those that I picked out as very impressive. So I'm pleased to see that she's come through the process. I'm happy to endorse to move the recommendation.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to comment? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. All right, item 13.8, policy 14103, driveway access to property. Recommendation to council place the revised driveway access property policy 4103 on public exhibition for 28 days. And submissions be invited to council during that period. No submissions are received within the exhibition period. The policy can be adopted as presented. And that this particular policy actually has the delegation to the general manager in the initial. No need to add forward. So, do I move in a second to Councillor Hayden? And Councillor Gibbon. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation or if we can't. Thank you.
Councillor Gibbon.
Yes, I'm happy to second this. My only query through you, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Technical Services is, should this have a reference to the curb and gutter policy? Because the curb and gutter policy obviously also talks about driveway access and gradients, etc. There's a reference in this to the curbs, such as in page 253. So I don't know if I could actually see the cross-referencing here, but maybe I'm wrong. I would have thought it'd have to be pulled up. But it doesn't seem to be cross-referenced because we do refer to curb and guttering in this driveway access policy.
To the chair, there is no direct correlation with the curb and gutter policy per se.
For instance, it says on page 253, for gutter crossings in existing curb and gutter, both the curb and gutter are to be removed, etc. Well, I don't know. Does, you know, do they have to reinstate the curb and gutter to the state it was under the curb and gutter policy? I don't know.
Through the chair, certainly this is the construction guideline in terms of if there was a to be removed, certainly what the expectation would be in terms of replacement. Other than the curb and gutter policy, more so associated with implementation of new curb and gutter, as opposed to you know, the rehab or replacement of existing curb and gutter. So I don't see the need to draw both policies linking them, but council may have a different view.
So could I ask a question? We haven't curbed and gutted a street. Someone puts a gutter crossing in. And then when we do and they've complied with this policy, and then we do the curb and gutter, but the curb and gutter causes that crossing because the curb and gutter is higher than the crossing, what happens?
For the chair, that's certainly a difficult one in terms of setting a gradient or a suitable gradient to cater for all driveways. Of course, that is the difficulty in retrofitting. Look again, however, I think that's what we need to be very cognizant of in when an applicant does make or present such a situation, whether in fact we actually enforce that they go down that path. And again, look, the strategy is around the delivery program of a priority rolling curb and gutter program to certainly address that type of scenario. So that's the difficulty of it, I guess, Councillor McKibben.
So if in that scenario, I've just
Given, the recommendations about putting on public exhibition, we've already discussed that if we're going to have the need to make further submissions, now we can spend a lot of time going to and fro here, or we can have a discussion during the exhibition period with the technical services director, and you can supply some of your undoubtedly excellent submissions to resolve this particular problem. And I'd rather do it that way and then bring it back to a vote in a month's time rather than.
Yep, I'm happy with that, Mr. Mayor. Proceed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any problem with the wording that is in the current policy. I have a bit of a problem with a couple of things that I think should be in there and not in there. So the policy is supposed to be providing guidance to people who are planning to put in an access on how to go about it, and the policy is also supposed to make sure it's safe for both them and for other users of the road. So I think a very important thing that should be included is guidance on where to actually locate a new access, particularly on rural roads, to make sure that there is adequate sight distance in both ways and not put just over a crest or around a corner that you can't see very far in one direction. And also a layout plan showing the radius that's required so people can turn in and out without having to go right over the wrong side of the road and also cause a hazard. So I have an amendment I would like to move, if I may, which is, I've given this to Sharon, but I'll read it out as well, that the driveway access to properties policy 4103 be further revised to provide guidance on site distance requirements for rural accesses, a standard layout plan for rural accesses, and the approval process for roads under Traffic for New South Wales control.
Yeah, to follow a bit of information. Certainly this policy as it stands right now is a set of like requirements and standards that we would expect. But they're also associated with something else that's generally on the land, and that would be a dwelling, a subdivision, and requires development consent. So the very thing that Councillor Tucker talks about in terms of like on a crest or on a corner and those sort of things are dealt with as part of a development application process, and there are conditions that could assist in giving what you're asking for much more importance than putting it in a policy. Like I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that the first thing is like under the Roads Act, a policy doesn't usually then reinforce what the Act says. And on a Transport for New South Wales road, you'd have to comply with the Roads Act to start with, which could be a separate policy, separate consent. And our engineers are always duty bound to have a look at proposed accesses in development application for that. So if they had concerns with the very thing that you're raising, there's another avenue to do that. And this policy also talks about consents and construction certificates, which you can't do without a Part 4 approval under the development application. So I'm not trying to give your amendment a little bit.
And I understand the point you're raising, particularly about Transport for New South Wales. But I just would have thought it would have been the ideal place to provide some guidance on site distance. So when someone's planning a new access, when they're looking at the policy to see what's going to be needed, they've got it all there in front of them, and they don't have to go through that process of, oh, I'll put my access here, and then the director coming along and saying that's no good because you haven't met the site distance requirements. I just thought it would be helpful to us and to prospective applicants if it was all set out in the policy.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that there are avenues that we
All
can
right.
consider.
Now, the mover of the original motion, are you happy with this?
No, I'm not happy with that.
Okay, hang on. The seconder is Councillor McKibben. Are you happy with it or not? Well, it doesn't matter. The mover's not happy with it, so it's going to have to be in the amendment. So you'll move the amendment. Councillor Tucker, is there a seconder?
Sorry, I would like a point of clarification from the general manager or technical services director.
Agree.
This driveway access policy, it applies to all driveway accesses. So if a rural property has a gate accessing across the road, it applies to it.
With the chair, it provides. Look, it does aim to provide a guidance, yes, correct.
It says accesses are not to be constructed without a construction certificate having been obtained. So that means all rural properties with access from a road to any one of their paddocks needs a construction certificate from council. Is that correct?
Through chair, that's correct.
No, that's not correct.
That's what it says.
If you have a look at the comment, it relates to where consent is required from
Now,
council.
just a moment here, councillor McKibben, you asked for clarification. We're still in the middle of the process of deciding whether it's going to be a seconder. So I was about to make a determination when you broke in. So unless you're going to second councillor Tucker's amendment, which you can't do.
Which you can't do.
So let's just deal with it. Let's just deal with the motion, the amendment, and then we'll keep going from there. All right, so this amendment has lapsed for want of a seconder. So we go back to the original recommendation. So councillor McKibben.
Yes, so if I could get clarity, because this says all works within a road reservation. And it says accesses are not to be constructed without a construction certificate. Accesses from public roads to property boundary is the responsibility of the property owner. Rural accesses will be constructed to a council standard, including recessing of gate, culvert and head walls where required, and sealing of access off sealed roads. Site distance to be a minimum standard. So does that mean that for every rural access to a paddock off a public road, a construction certificate needs to be issued, which certifies the things that are referred to there?
Through the chair, you can only do construction certificate if first you've obtained development consent. Now, this policy gives standards for appropriate and safe access construction. We would only deal with it unless my staff are going to tell me otherwise, because I would note that we'd be spending probably every waking hour out riding up farm accesses that don't comply with this standard when they require or they are used for a primary purpose under an application to council for that purpose.
So are we saying that we are absolutely clear that the wording of the Act and Section 138 of the Roads Act 1993 does not require
Point of order.
property owners to obtain approval from the council? I don't know, I'm asking.
I refer to my previous recommendation that if you've got things like this to take up with the general manager, do so in the next 28 days. At the moment, we could spend a lot of time answering minor questions. This is about getting it on exhibition and getting the communities and councillors significant debates resolved about these policies.
But this, Mr. Mayor, has a significant impact as to the application of this policy on large areas of the council area if it does extend to all accesses to property.
Okay, I want a point of order and vote now. I can.
You can, I don't have to accept it. Now, I agree with you, but you've had a lot of the floor time tonight, and there are other people here. And I appreciate your diligence. But I would like to see that resolved between you and the general manager and the interpretation of the act in a place apart from in the ordinary meeting. It will be coming back to the council in 28 days, and we have 28 days to come to agreement about some of these other issues. And I think that is the best way of doing it. So I will put the motion now. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors.
It's 13.
13.9, policy 4104, public gates and grids. And the recommendation is that council place the revised public gates and grids policy 4104 on public exhibitions 28 days, and submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policy will be adopted as presented, and delegations to the general manager to provide amend any minor changes proposed. Movement and second, Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, happy to endorse the recommendation in all three parts, and if anyone has any anything to do to reword anything in the policy, take it up with the general manager so we can all move on tonight. Thank you.
Councillor McKibben.
Sorry, is councillor Hayden proposing an amendment to add those words you just stated at the end?
I think you did the proposal for that. Isn't it? I'm proposing an amendment.
I think it is a couple.
So are you seconding Councillor McKibben?
I'm seconding what was originally read out. Yes.
The first three paragraphs, three recommendation, three parts. Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the most important paragraph of the existing policy has been omitted with the paragraph 3B, which says council will write to each owner at regular intervals seeking written confirmation that the grid or gate has been inspected and is being maintained to council standards. So it is critical to make sure that our register of gates and grids is up to date and current. We know who all the owners are, and it is critical and the cheapest and easiest way to be confident that they are being maintained to appropriate standards. Because if we don't do that, the risk is that that sooner or later, someone will have an accident, or someone will be hurt. And I've heard of people being killed at grids and gates, or a vehicle will be damaged. They'll make a claim to council. Council will say, no, well, that's a matter for the owner. And when we look into it, it'll turn out the owner sold up a couple of years ago and no one knew, and the new owner denies all responsibility. So I would like to propose an amendment to add an extra, a number 4 to the motion, which is that paragraph 3B be retained in the policy.
I'd like to comment on that. Which the director.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you. Look, it's certainly a contentious issue whereby, again, as you made the statement that you put a grid in over time, if properties do change, there can be, I suppose, some point where people do deny ownership of a grid. This policy does reserve the right to actually remove the grid in that case, and 9 times out of 10, simple answers in terms of ownership certainly do come to the fore once that notification is presented, again on a public road. So writing to owners, not necessarily on a frequent basis, be productive, I don't believe. Certainly councils staff do inspect road networks and most of these roads, certainly all these grids are on unsealed roads. In which then, certainly if there is a requirement to do a maintenance on a grid, the owner, as known, would be notified of such because it's a requirement for this policy then for them to maintain that grid for the life of the asset. If they're not doing that, then again, in section 3, does talk about council obviously notifying that particular owner of that asset that it will be removed should they not repair it within an agreed time frame.
So your amendment will delete the proposed subparagraph B. The council may instruct the owners to repair any grid gate, reflective, wet markers, advanced warning signs or road approaches.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I expect that actually covers off on the one you're talking about.
No, page 277
Yeah.
has the track changes.
Mhm.
And it removes the old paragraph.
That is included.
So through the chair, just by way of,
That's the
I
one,
think
that's the one that's been dropped out. It's council.
Correct. the council staff have indicated that that is not quite. Now, Councillor Tucker is asking for it to be
I
reinstated.
understand that, and I'm saying that the subparagraph B that's been left there actually will cover off on that in a different manner.
Correct. So my comment would be, we're not any less liable if we take the advice of a landowner that says, oh, here you go, I've inspected it and it meets council standards. We have staff to go out to do that. I think the emphasis and the push in this policy is that new section B where it says council may instruct owners to upgrade their grids if they're deemed by us to not meet that council standard.
I'm talking about the old paragraph 3B.
I understand that.
Former policy.
Yep.
As a means of making sure that our register of what gates and grids exist and who the owners are is maintained, and not simply relying on a council employee happening to notice that something doesn't look right and taking the trouble to report it and initiate those actions.
All right. All right, Councillor Hayden, you're the mover.
Yeah, I don't support that, section 4, as stated earlier by the general manager. Any policy changes you want to submit, putting through in writing to the general manager.
So you have moved this amendment. Is there a seconder? There's no seconder, then the amendment lapses. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour? And that was unanimous. Travelling stock routes. Policy 3503, the recommendations of council place to revise policy 3503, travelling stock route. A travelling stock on public expeditions for 28 days and submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policy be adopted as presented. And the delegation of the general manager be provided to amend any minor changes proposed prior to exhibition. Moving to second, Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
Happy to use the recommendation in all 3 parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've put a number of comments on this policy already through to the Technical Services Director. I just had one comment. I just wasn't quite clear from the response. There is a clause that says in relation to grazing on the road, stock is to be kept off the road at all times unless the stock purposefully being transferred from one side of the road to the other as a herd by the stock person. Now, I've said to the technical services director that's totally impractical. Is it considered appropriate to delete that then, technical services director?
Certainly it is a practice that does occur, and always has, look, certainly under the appropriate signage being erected on roads. It's not an uncommon practice, so look, I don't think it's something that should be deleted. That's my recommendation.
Look, I'll raise this with you later, but I'm sure that the Bruce Watt may also have a view on this. Once you've got the signage either end and you've got someone at the end keeping an eye, they can't keep an eye on what's happening in the middle and the stock crossing all over the road all the time. We all know what practically happens. So it just seems an impractical provision. Anyway, I'll leave that, Mr. Mayor. I'll raise it again. I just asked the technical services director to look at that because I do think it's impractical.
Okay. Councillor Graham.
I'll just make a comment on page 285. I think you have to do a typo. It's number 5, Australian stock. Of the form private property, it's probably supposed to be from. Oh, form. And I just got a comment on the last dot point about Australian stock. Does you have to contact the owner of the stock to take action to ensure that stock do not stray without council approval? Yeah. So the council can approve. Right.
Or steer and.
Yeah, so the council can approve them to stray.
I think that's a minor amendment that needs to be.
You'll probably say that for something else.
Yes. There are some plucky words. Anyone else got anything they wish to add? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously, thank you. 1311, policy 4105, Kevin Gutter construction. Recommendation, council place the revised Kevin Gutter construction policy 4105 on public exhibition for 28 days and submissions be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received, the exhibition period policy will be adopted as presented and the general manager's delegation clause included. Mover and seconder, Councillor Kevin, Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've put some comments again through to the technical services director. I'm sure there was an unintended or inserted instead of an and at one stage, which was basically a reasonably substantial change in meaning. So I'm sure that I think the changes have been accepted by the technical services director. So I'm more than happy with the policy as revised.
Thank you.
Happy, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm still not satisfied that this proposed policy really addresses the notification requirements clearly enough. I mean, this is what led to this being reviewed in the first place. There was confusion between the notification of the contribution required and the notification of when work is going to start. And I think the important thing is that there be sufficient notification of the actual the council intends to undertake the project and how much each owner is going to be required to pay. And most importantly, and it doesn't appear at the moment, is that there be some sort of opportunity for those people to either make comment or ask questions or to object if they want to. So again, I have an amendment which I would like to propose, please.
Sorry, I don't want to preempt what you're saying, Councillor Tucker, but the changes that have been provided by Councillor McKibben go a very long way to answer the very thing that I've seen your notes, and if you would like to see what that says and then certainly talk to us about that, I'm just trying to And you haven't seen it, which is why rather than stopping you from doing what you do, I just wanted to preempt it.
It was sent to all councillors, Mr. General Manager.
I can't remember offhand whether I read it or might have just skimmed through it. And I think there's a number of these policies. I'm likely to be making some submissions within the 28 days. So this is likely to be another one. But I'm making the point that I think there is still that confusion, probably in our minds, of what we mean by the notification, and the fact that there is still no opportunity provided for people to comment or object if they choose. Look, I'm happy to take the General Manager's suggestion and have a closer look at Councillor McKibben's points. And if I'm still not convinced that meets what I think is required, I will put in a further submission during the 28 days. If I may just make one other passing point though, it states that the Roads Act stipulates a half contribution on frontages and a quarter on sides. I don't think that's correct. I couldn't find anything in the Roads Act that mentions a 25% contribution for side boundaries. I think that has been traditional here. I think that is just something that this council has adopted for side boundaries. I don't think it's in the Roads Act, and that needs to be checked, and that may need some done.
Happy to make that point. Just before we move on, council has a curb and gutter construction plan that's been endorsed by council that absolutely directs residents as to when the next phase of curb and gutter is going to start. During that exhibition of those documents, they absolutely have the power to make comment as to whether they want that or not. I take your point about the contribution, but it's not like council. And my other point is that councils from time to time would notice a motion that says we want to do certain things, and that's generally on the back of a resident saying, why can't I have curb and gutter, or why can't I have this? So I don't quite agree with the commentary about residents don't have the opportunity to comment on that. I do take the point where our policy could be further enhanced to include what that means.
I won't proceed with that.
Okay, that's fine. Anyone else wish to comment or ask questions or oppose anything? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. I'm going to propose we have a 10-minute break at this point. I've got far too many green pads still in my mark copy. And I think it's a 10-minute break will do everyone good. So if you can be back seated at 8 o'clock, I'll be so grateful.
A very appropriate place to stop with the next policy coming up, I'd suggest.
Be quiet, Andrew.
All right, stop recording, please. All right, councillors and others who might be on the Zoom, we're now up to item 13.12, policy 2123, anti-bullying positive working relationship policy. Recommendation is that council place the new workplace behavioural standards and expectations policy 2123 on top of the exhibition 28 days, and submissions will be invited to council during that period. If no submissions are received within the exhibition period, the policy will be adopted as presented. Delegation of the general manager be provided to amend any minor changes proposed. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendations in 3 parts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed that this policy has been updated considerably from what previously existed, and hence there's a complete or large rewrite of it in accordance with current requirements. And I've read through it, and I'm happy with it as presented. More than happy to second the proposal, the recommendation.
Councillor Trimble, you going to say something, were you, or did I just misinterpret you?
No, you just missed me by a split second for a second. That was it.
Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern with this one is that what appears to me an inconsistency which could cause all sorts of problems potentially. So what I'm referring to is on page 311. So we're in clause 8, which is complaints. And the last paragraph says, all complaints in relation to workplace bullying, harassment or discrimination will be dealt with in accordance with council's complaint handling policy 2101. But then further on in this policy, in clause 13, it sets out a procedure for general guidance and lodging a complaint and receiving a formal complaint. And I've tried to compare the process set out in that clause 13 with the process set out in policy 2101. Now, they see that quite differently and they're hard to compare, but it appears to me that there's some significant differences. And I'm just concerned that that could lead to the things not being done properly or someone following one procedure in one policy and where they should have followed another one. So I am suggesting that we should just take a breath and ask that it be have another look at it over the next month and bring it back next month before it goes on exhibition to make sure that this policy, if it's going to refer to policy 2101, to make sure it is consistent. So I do have an amendment ready to go.
Well, this is one of those ones that looks like it needs to be looked quite extensively. Make sure that
that's my point. That's why I'm suggesting that.
No, and that's fine. That's great. I've already had a discussion with the general manager about some other parts I think are a bit funky. And we'll review those. Can you just, so you're talking about the complaints in paragraph 8 versus the complaint that something in.
Yeah, that's right. Clause 8 refers to the process being in accordance with a different policy. Then clause 13 sets up the process. So there's two different references to the process that is to be followed, and I don't think they are the same thing.
Want to comment on that?
I'm trying to review where that exists, Mr. Mayor. What I can say is that this will basically give an avenue for people to understand what that complaints process is. And that complaints process is available for all, not just to staff, and it should be followed to that level.
There's two different things to follow, that's my point.
So where is the two different things?
Well, if you look on page 311.
Yep. Yeah, I've got the first bit.
Yeah, so just before subparagraph 8.1, it says all complaints, blah, 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 will be dealt with in accordance with policy 2101.
Yep.
If you carry on further in this policy 2123, and you get to clause 13 procedure.
13. Yep.
And so we're on page 312, 313,
yep,
314, 315.
Yep.
Now I have tried to compare the two processes and I just couldn't do it because they are set out in very different ways. And I'm not sure that they are consistent. In fact, I'm fairly confident that they are not consistent.
Through the chair, I'm more than happy to have a look at that through that.
And I'm suggesting that before it goes on public exhibition, that we get that check.
But so my commentary is that doesn't mean that policy 2101 won't be changed as part of reflecting this policy, which is a up to date one.
I agree, and that's in my proposed amendment.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Anyone else?
So, should I move this amendment or?
I can't tell you.
I don't
that
think
either.
it's, I'm not sure how you frame that amendment.
Well,
I think what you're planning to do, which is to have a chat with the general manager during
I'm suggesting deferring putting on public exhibition because of the potential conflict between two policies. So it's very short. I'll read out my proposed amendment.
Okay.
And that is that workplace behavioural standards and expectation policy 2133 be further reviewed to ensure it is consistent with policy 2101 and that complaints handling policy 2101 also be reviewed.
Okay.
And yeah, it's on screen there.
Luba, you're happy?
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Okay. Can you?
Hang on.
This is no. But this is an amendment different to that in which has been presented.
Oh,
And I would suggest that if councillor Tucker has an amendment in this regard, as it's been highlighted, then the motion from councillor Hayden and McKibben is different to that, so they would need
Yes, it
to.
is substantially different. You're right.
So you couldn't change it on the run.
So I need a secondary.
Yes.
All right. So you'll moved it.
I'll
Is there a
have
second?
that, yeah.
Councillor Trember?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to it?
No.
All right. So I'll put the amendment. That is that workplace behavioural standards and expectations policy 2123 be further reviewed to ensure it's consistent with policy 2101 and that complaints handling policy 2101 also be reviewed.
I have an amendment.
We haven't got a mover in a second. We've got a mover in a second. So what is your amendment there, councillor McKibben?
I was going to suggest that this be the first of three and that the following two, the original ones would follow this, but saying subject to the review that the being undertaken, that the policy be placed on public exhibition so that we don't have to wait again to go around this process at the next meeting, because if I understand why we need this, but there's no reason that this couldn't be done and then it be put on public exhibition before it comes back to the next meeting, because we're going to review the final version after the public exhibition anyway.
I think the only issue with the next meeting is it's 28 days away already.
Okay, all right.
But I have no problem with your concept. It just means that the following meeting we'll have it ready to go then.
All right, fine. I'm happy.
Through the chair, just to give you some satisfaction, it is our intention to bring those that then relate to this back together. So if you defer this to put, you'll be simply reviewing probably a suite of documents that will talk to each other. You know, it makes no difference as well. So if you want to go down this path, it's nothing unusual.
So what do you need to add to what's on this proposed amendment to make that happen, councillor McKibben?
Well, I would be just sorry. Just going back to the.
I think it's reasonably clear, Mr. Mayor. I don't think that there needs to be any addition, so we'll just bring it back together.
So you will put it on, you'll bring it back and we'll then put it on exhibition.
Together with the complaint handling policy and any other one that forms part of this.
Okay, I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? That's unanimous. The amendment becomes the motion. All those in favour? That is passed unanimously as well. Good work, council.
332.
All right, item 1313, planning proposal, the Oberon Sporting Complex, 31 O'Connell Road, Oberon. And the recommendation is that the planning proposal be submitted to the New South Wales Department of Planning and Environment for gateway determination to permit a registered club at 31 O'Connell Road, Oberon, comprising of lots DP 1073827 and 5 DP 2364 as an additional permitted use under Schedule 1 of the Local Environmental Plan 2 of 2013. That following the completion of the public exhibition period, a further report be provided to council detailing results of the public exhibition, and should no submissions be received, the planning proposal report to DPE for determination. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the both recommendations. I did actually want to speak to the background on page 333. I just have a query here in relation to the ancillary buildings comprising of, there's change rooms mentioned twice in there, and also with the ancillary building, there's no mention of any grandstand, and I thought from memory in first thought process of all this that there was a grandstand, and I'm just a little concerned.
I think
that
that's
it's not
the
mentioned.
spectator team.
Okay, right,
Otherwise known as the grandstand. Definitely.
okay. Might could there a few change rooms on just given one,
Through the chair, I think the change would be one a male or one female.
but it just says change room
Take it.
and change room.
Councillor McKibben.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm more than happy to second this. I suppose I was a bit surprised that we hadn't included in our original proposal, or thought earlier, that a proposal for a registered club, because it was always contemplated this would be a registered club. And do we have any time frame as to how long the Department of Planning and Environment is likely to take to consider this before we can put it on public exhibition?
Through the chair, without going back over a history of this development, this was deemed the easiest way for us to continue on with doing the development without causing any more delays.
I understand that.
The timing is short. We're looking in 2 months, which we could do concurrently.
Why didn't we make this application earlier, I suppose is my only question. And I know that JRPP insisted on it as part of their, or it was a recommendation out of their approval, but surely it was always contemplated it was going to be a registered club, so we could have gone through this earlier.
Through the chair, I'm more than happy to take that offline and discuss that with you.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm happy to move forward and be second to the recommendation.
You. Tucker.
Thank you. Just one quick question to the director, if I may. I'm just after an explanation of what the gateway determination is. I don't understand the terminology.
Through the chair, a gateway determination is what you need to do when you want to change a component of your strategic planning documents. So in this instance, it's an administration change to allow a permissible item, which is defined by the Act, into your LEP. A gateway proposal is a planning proposal you may have been referred to as. The gateway proposal is just that mechanism.
Yes, for something like that. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you.
2, 14, and 1.
Oh, reports of information. Item 14.1, the report, the recommendations report, item 14.1 is received as information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Graham. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation to receive this supportive information. There's a good lot of information there as well. And I'm very happy to see the amount of staff there, our number 87 sitting there for March. See an increase of 5 staff members, and some of those are absolutely brilliant staff members. I'm also happy to see the amount of operator training that's been carried on throughout the March, April period as well. Thank you.
Councillor Ray?
I'll second the motion, and I also noted the amount of training that was going on. It's great.
Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question, page 367. On the general HR matters, paragraph 6, it mentions a lot of reviews of council policies. So does that mean we can expect a whole lot of policies coming to the next meeting?
Through the chair, you can expect quite a few policies for review coming to the next available meeting.
Thank you.
And by then we'll all know how to do it. We hope. Anyone else? Put the motion, all those in favour? Passed unanimously. Item 14.2, monthly activity report, planning development. The recommendation is that item 14.2 is received as information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McEwen, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the recommendation of this report. I did want to double check here under planned activity, under where it says Western Joint Regional Planning Panel. I'm hoping that is Western as in the Western area and not Western as in the place. So there might be just a bit of a typo there. And it's also really wonderful to see how many food premises have been inspected. That's extremely good. Extremely good. And I also would like to mention the truffle processing facility by Canley Road. That is really good to see more.
The Bill and
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just asking on the awning safety inspection program. Do we believe there are any issues actually with the structural awnings of any of our premises, in particular in the main street?
Yeah, the hotel.
Yeah. Okay. Any others?
Through the chair, not at this stage, Councillor McGibbon, we've asked for investigations to be undertaken, so watch this space, I suppose.
Thank you. And the only other thing is, I noticed that we've got a couple of DA applications lodged, which have sort of information has been received by council around September and October, and quite a few in October, and they haven't been processed yet. Are they imminent? Because that's nearly 6 months.
Through the chair, sorry, Councillor, if you've got any particular ones there, I can have a look into.
Well, if you look in the table, you'll see one: information received date 29th September 22, 2 lines down, 13th of October. Then we go down about another 3, 23rd of October, 17th of October. So there was a stop the clock, but the information was then received in most instances.
Yeah, through the chair.
10, 2019, the 5th one down. 3, it's a mob. Yep. There are 3 information received in September.
Anyway, I'm sure you probably don't have it at fingertips, but we just need to keep an eye on those because they are about 6 months behind.
I'll take that on notice.
And the table indicates that yes, there was a stop the clock, but the information's been received. So, yeah. There's another one in February 23, so that's probably what's that? That's probably 2 months. 2 months there. If you might just look into those, thank you.
Yes.
I'm more than happy to second this report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Three, item 14.3, monthly activity report for technical services, and the recommendations of item 14.3, which received as information. Hang on. 14.3. All right, moving second, councillor Hayden. Come on. Anyone? Councillor Trimbar. Councillor Hayden.
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation of this report. There's been a lot of road work going on and re-sheeting of the gravel roads. The work that's been done has been done exceptionally. Our road crews have also had passers by giving them commendations on the amount of work that's being done, and they're quite happy receiving some merit-based praise and not have people condemning our roads. So it's good all round, and it's nice to see the Apex Park toilet is now finished and it looks absolutely lovely. So they've done a very good job of that. Technical services have been flat out by the looks of things, so thank you.
Councillor Trimbar.
I'm happy to second the report, and yes, thank you to the technical team for continuing to keep our roads to a very high standard. It's outstanding.
Well said. Anyone else? I have one question for the technical services director. How many lanes are we going to have on Archstone Road? That looks like an estimate.
They're going to be landing 747s on that one.
This one.
Yeah.
The quality of the photography is right.
Yeah, it's been widened out a little bit.
But it looks really good.
Yeah, creative.
Creating landing there, okay. All right, item 14.4, corporate services. Activity.
Didn't vote on it.
All those in favour?
Giggling too
All
much.
those in favour? Passed unanimously. Item 14.4, monthly activity report for corporate services, and recommendations that item 14.4 is received as information. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation of this report. Corporate services have been pretty busy. It's been pretty hectic in Oberon. There's been events continually going, and then of course with the finance and payroll and youth week, it looks like youth week's going to kick off with a new fishing little workshop, and also been in some talks down at the Visitor Information Centre. We've had two louts meet down there and had a workshop for NAIDOC week and Aboriginal activities in Oberon, and that was very well received, and 12 people attended that as well. So it's good to see everything progressing and moving on. Thank you.
You, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, indeed, all the activities from field to forest, etc., have been a great success. And I have to say the producers' producers' dinner was up to standard as always, and fantastic event. And it's good to see that we're migrating things to open office. It seems to be going with the financial data cleanup and the pay for roll day change, etc. And that all the other areas are being, I assume we're just about rid of our former provider now, are we? Was it Citric or something?
Silica.
Silica, yeah, that's right. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Civica, that's correct. Yes.
Civica, yeah. Have we got anything remaining?
We are very close to be moving on to open office, and now we are commencing what that removal from Civica looks like in terms of old data. But yes, we are a long way down that process, and very happy to be moving in that direction. So yes, pretty much if we can move to a new provider, we are looking to do so.
Great job. I'm more than happy to second this report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'd just like to draw your attention to the community consultation dates and times.
Yeah.
And they have changed slightly, and I think corporate service, very definitely female out to all councils and others. Yeah, I put one out today. Okay. Yeah. And the consultation period is always in May, and it's always a good night out. So as many councillors as possible should be there.
Oh, yes, all of them.
The expectations are high that everyone will attend to each one, unless there is extenuating circumstances.
Especially Burrigo.
And yeah, Burrigo is always a good drive.
Always like.
It's all good stuff. I can tell you now, we'll receive a better reception than some other community consultations happened recently. So. All right, if there's anyone else, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Thank you. Pass through unanimously. 14.5 statement of investments. No, we haven't.
Oh, we did that one. What did we do?
That was.
Yeah, sorry.
Recommendations of item 14.5 we received as information. Moving second, please. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Tucker, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Tucker.
Happy to second it, happy to add something.
All right, anyone with questions or observations? No. Oh, okay. Is that a preemptive vote or? All those in favour? The motion is passed unanimously. All right, item 14.6, grants update, March 23, the report, recommendations report, item 14.6 is received as information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the report. I really hope we start seeing some grants flow through now, that government's settling back into their position, but we'll wait and see.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, there were no grants and funding notifications received during the period, and that our table of grants of pending grant applications has probably shrunk quite a lot, noting that some of them date back to 22nd of November, which we'll be getting on to 6 months soon. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those grant applications, especially the Betterment Fund, which is quite large ones for the Campbell's River and Arkston Road deviation.
Yeah, and anyone else? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Passed unanimously. 14.7, water and sewer plant report, and the recommendation is that the report item 14.6 is 14.7. I think we need some proofreading.
Yeah.
The water and sewer plant report are in the report item 14.7 is received with information. Councillor Hayden and Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the recommendation. One thing I'd like to bring up again, and I think I've brought it up twice, and the members in our community have been a bit disgusted with it as well. But number one pump had to be lifted several times now regarding rags. Is there any way that we can publish something in the newspaper just advising people, please don't put rags or tea towels or clothing or anything that you might be throwing down into the toilet, because it's costing you money, because it costs council money.
Would you care to put something in the paper about this?
Yeah, big warning about rags down the dunny.
Think about how I carefully worded.
Yeah, oh yeah, most
Thank you.
definitely. Most definitely. But it's just disappointing to see that again. And I would like to ask the technical services director, where is pump, what streets run into pump station number 1?
All other fire pump stations ultimately end up.
In
Number
that
one.
one,
Yeah.
right, okay, so we can't designate an area to go cranking.
Um,
Okay,
no.
And if you remind me, Councillor Hayden, I'll put something in the next.
Okay.
Need to vote.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Happy to.
Councillor McKibben.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also noticed that with the last few meetings, we've always had this problem with our pumps and rags and them having to be pulled out. Maybe we should have a rag levy.
Yes. I like that one.
I'm
We'll include it in the.
silent on this one.
Okay, I know, yeah.
Okay, anyone else? I'll put the motion all in favour. Pass unanimously. 14.8 is already done. 14.9, status of council resolutions, April 23. Recommendations and reports, item 14.9 is received this information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to receive the report. I've gone through this. Quite a few resolutions are in process and have been finalised, so thank you.
Councillor McKibben, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm having a bit of trouble reading the number, but it's the one at the bottom of page 413 that goes into 414, and it's the business case for I can't remember it, Glider Street, I think it is. What the information, the plans and engineering, we're expecting to have that this month, and then what are we going to do? Yeah.
Sorry, so through the chair, that was a proposal where council were looking to.
Subdivided dual occupancy, yeah.
So we're just looking to go down the path of doing some plans for how a dual occupancy could sit there.
Yeah.
As part of our due diligence, you'll note, or if you can remember, there was a huge water sewer main that runs
That's
through
right.
that block, which was, as I indicated previously, probably the reason why it was designated a park to start with, because there's quite significant council infrastructure there. So it's now a matter of trying to create a decent footprint for the dwellings.
Yeah.
That land, to give council an understanding of what that could look like.
Yeah.
Once again, it went through that process where council were encouraged to apply for all these things on the basis of short stock in housing. So we did that, and that's been substantially removed now from government policy. So we'll look to do it ourselves in accordance with the resolution.
The other one I had was the bottom of page 416, which I think was the residential land development. We're going out to expressions of interest on this. I thought we were going out to requests for tender.
Through the chair, the reason why we proposed, so yes, we do have a resolution to tender.
Yes.
The reason why an expression of interest document will be put out is because I can't come back to you and tell you how much it's going to cost at this point in time without having some understanding about what those costs will be. So the expression of interest is the way to, in fact, ask contractors without going down that path of a tender to put all this stuff in for then council to turn around and say, oh no, that's too much, we don't want to do that anymore. So we're trying to create a document where we can seek out some level of costing without going down that path of a tender at this point in time.
Because with the industrial land, we are going out for an RFT, are we?
Through the chair, now the industrial land has now had a complication run through it as well.
I see.
There has been a request from an individual to purchase a number of hectares of that land, and there'll be a conversation that council has in the very near future as to what that looks like. So
are we entitled to do that in terms of probity?
Through the, you're entitled to buy and sell land that you own regardless. Probity has nothing to do with this. Oh, well,
as long as it's deemed an appropriate market value.
yeah, that's right.
So we'll expect to see something in relation to that in our May meeting minutes, or what?
Very near future, councillor.
Okay, they were the main ones. It was the industrial land and the residential land. I just was a little bit lost from what the comments were.
So simply through the chair, we sourced to do this via grant. That was unsuccessful. Now we're going back to our original.
No, I realise that. The Oberon Street, I think it's the overhead awning. It's halfway down page 418.
Yep.
Additional quotes being sourced. Did we had a problem there with getting quotes for this awning, wasn't it? And are we still having that problem?
Through the chair, the problems with the quotes were, yes, we were having difficulty getting quotes.
Yeah.
The second one was when we did get a quote, we're currently just reassessing what that quote looks like. So it's going through that process.
Okay. All right. That's right. Yes. So when do we expect the report back on the alternate site locations for the mountain bike track?
Through the chair, we've been able to engage a consultant, have a look at that for a number of locations around the district. So probably a high-end report will be brought back to council for them to look at putting in place as part of a plan or a strategic policy of some description in the near future.
Okay. Do we have any response from the changes to the borrowing policy, in particular for the hub? Have we got anything subsequent to the 11th of April, or we're still waiting?
So the chair, no response yet from our letter and a follow-up.
Because we need ministerial approval, don't we, for that?
That's correct. So we have sent follow-ups on that. We're eagerly awaiting that response.
And what you don't know is I've also talked to the DepSec of OLG when I went to Orange with the mayor to discuss other things, and he was going to take it up on their behalf.
Okay. I think that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just being the hub was mentioned, I was very pleased and relieved this morning when I got a phone call saying the windows had arrived. So that was causing significant delay.
Sorry, what was that for, Mr. Mayor? I missed that.
The windows have been delayed and were supposed to be here 2 weeks ago, then a week ago, and they eventually arrived this morning. So,
For the hub?
yep.
Okay.
So now complete all the internal work without having to worry about ingress of water or wind or snow or whatever. So that's good. So it should be all done by the end of May.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did have one other. I thought in respect to the one on page 431, halfway down, I don't know that in respect to the section 356 donation request, the request from the Uniting Church, where we declined the application, did we actually encourage them to apply in the next round?
Yes, yes, we have.
Okay.
You may see something on that too.
Okay. All right. I'm happy. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to second this proposed motion recommendation.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. There's no urgent business. So we'll now deal with our confidential business. In accordance with Local Government Act of 1993 and the Local Government General Regulations of 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in section 10A2 of the Act. It should be dealt with in a part of the meeting closed to the media and public. I would like to thank members of the public for joining us this evening, mainly via Zoom, and say good night. I'll now ask Councillor to move. And
Chris, can you let me know if my pull one of those pumps down? Can I go under the suitably grotesque photo to go with the article?
Right.
Thanks. Good night.
Right. Can I move in a second to go into confidential? Thank you, Councillor Hayden, Councillor Graham. All in favour? All right, stop recording, please. Okay, thank you. Nice. Following resolutions were made during the section of the meeting that was closed to the public, and there were no members of the public present at the time, either in person or online. Item 16.1, tender 2023/4, supply, delivery and laying of asphalt road surfacing. Council accepts the tender submission T23/4 from New South Wales Building and Civil Proprietary Limited for the provision of supply, delivery and laying of asphalt road surfacing materials for a period of 3 years, commencing on 1 May 2023 to 30th of April 2026 for both capital and maintenance related work. And the General Manager to be authorised to sign contract. Item 16.2, clearing, grubbing and mulching service, tender 2023/1. The council accepts the tender submission T23/1 from OS Trees Proprietary Limited for clearing, grubbing and mulching services for the period of 3 years from 1 May 2023 to 30th of June 2026 to assist in the delivery of these works in accordance with the tender T2023/1. 2, the council accepts the tender submission T2023/1 from Agile Arbor Proprietary Limited for the clearing, grubbing and mulching services for a period of 3 years from 1 May 2023 to 30th of June 2026 to assist in the delivery of these works in accordance with tender T2023/1. The council accepts the tender submission T2023/1 from Trees of Us Tree Services for clearing, grubbing and mulching services for a period of 3 years from 1 May 2023 to 30th of June 2026 to assist in delivery of these works in accordance with the tender T2023/1 and that the General Manager be authorised to sign contract documents. Item 16.3, T2023/5, gravel crushing services 2023 through to 2026. The council accepts the tender submission T2023/5 from Dival's Earth Moving and Bulk Haulage for the provision of gravel crushing services for the period of 3 years from April 23 to the 30th of June 2026, and that the General Manager be authorised to sign the contract documents. The next ordinary meeting of Oberon Council will be held on Tuesday, the 16th of May 2023, commencing at 5:30 at the Oberon Council Chambers in Oberon Street, Oberon. I declare this meeting closed at 8:54. And wish everybody a good evening. You may stop recording.
Yeah.